In the gold rush towns of the West, desperate miners built their own justice system. Designed to protect fortune seekers, it soon let men be tried, convicted, and hanged in under an hour. Yet within months, courtrooms meant to serve justice handed power to the most ruthless. When the law became the outlaws, who would survive a world ruled by mob vengeance? The Black Hills were never meant to become a boomtown frontier. In 1868, the United States signed the Fort Laramie Treaty, promising the Black Hills to the Lakota people as sacred land. That promise lasted just 6 years. In the summer of 1874, General George Custer's expedition found gold near French Creek, and word spread faster than any government edict. By December, more than 15,000 prospectors had poured into the region, ignoring both the Army's warnings and treaty lines. Deadwood began as a cluster of tents and shanties in a gulch where the law held no ground. The U.S. Army tried to keep miners out, but the lure of gold overwhelmed every barrier. By the spring of 1876, Deadwood was officially platted, though its existence was still illegal under federal law. The town's muddy streets swarmed with thousands, each staking a claim on land that by treaty belonged to someone else. Newspapers like the Black Hills Pioneer printed lists of city ordinances, but no federal judge or marshal enforced them. In April 1877, a visitor counted at least 10,000 people squeezed into the gulch, yet the area still lacked official territorial authority. With no recognized government, no police, and no courts, Deadwood settlers faced a simple dilemma: survive by their own rules or not at all. In a place where the law was absent, order became whatever the majority could enforce, and justice depended on who controlled the meeting tent. A miner's court could spring to life in the space of an afternoon. When a dispute or accusation surfaced over a broken contract, a missing tool, or something darker, a crowd gathered, sometimes in a tent, sometimes around a campfire. There was no judge in robes, no courtroom. Instead, the miners called a mass meeting. Any man with a stake in the camp could nominate a judge, and a quick show of hands would settle the matter. Juries, too, were drawn from the crowd. 12 miners, sometimes more, sometimes fewer, stepped forward. No legal training was required, just a pick, a shovel, and the respect of your peers. Lawyers were almost always barred. The idea was to keep things simple and fair, but it also meant there was no one to argue the finer points or slow the process. Evidence came in the form of direct testimony: who saw what, whose boots were found in whose cabin, whose shovel had a fresh nick. Sometimes the only proof needed was the word of a trusted neighbor. The judge listened, the jury voted, and the verdict was handed down, often in less than an hour. Punishments ranged from a fine or public apology to banishment, flogging, or, in rare cases, execution. The sentence was carried out on the spot, enforced by the same men who had just served as jurors. There was no appeal, no higher authority. Justice in the mining camps was designed to be swift and decisive, but its very speed left cracks wide enough for error, or worse, for abuse, by those who knew how to sway a crowd. In Deadwood's crowded gulches, the rules of gold ownership were written in chalk on tent walls and erased just as quickly. Claim jumpers studied these makeshift codes for every possible loophole. A claim could be staked by hammering a notice to a tree, but the dimensions varied from district to district, sometimes 100 feet, sometimes 300 feet. If a miner missed a single day's labor or failed to post the right notice, his entire fortune hung in the balance. The homestake deposit, discovered in April 1876, promised untold riches. Its veins would eventually yield nearly a tenth of the world's gold, but in those first feverish months, paper boundaries and technicalities decided who got rich and who lost everything. Manipulation began with the notice rules. A claim was only as secure as its paperwork, and the requirements seemed to shift with every meeting. Some districts demanded a new notice every week. Others insisted on visible stakes at each corner. A miner who stepped away for supplies could return to find his notice torn down and a rival's in its place. If he protested, the matter went before a miners' court, where the outcome often depended less on evidence than on who controlled the meeting. Extralateral rights, a technical term for the privilege to follow a gold vein underground even if it crossed into someone else's claim, added another layer of confusion. The codes for these rights were often vague, leaving room for interpretation. A clever operator could argue that a rich vein discovered on his neighbor's land actually extended from his own claim, demanding a new trial. With no lawyers present and only miners' testimony to go by, the lines between honest dispute and outright theft blurred beyond recognition. The real advantage belonged to those who could pack a meeting. Miners' courts required only a low quorum, sometimes as few as a dozen men, to decide a case. Secret ballots made it easy for cliques to swing verdicts behind closed tent flaps. A handful of insiders could outvote the rightful owner, declare the claim forfeited, and walk away with legal title. The promise of gold drew men to Deadwood, but the promise of easy gold, taken not from the earth but from a neighbor's hands, proved just as tempting. The system designed to keep order now offered a playbook for legalized theft, fueling a sense of outrage that would soon boil over into something even more dangerous. Montana, winter of 1863. The trails between Bannock and Virginia City became hunting grounds for road agents, bandits who robbed and killed travelers, leaving bodies frozen in the snow. In a single year, over 100 men fell victim. With no courts and a sheriff suspected of leading the outlaws, miners took matters into their own hands. The Vigilance Committee formed, holding secret trials and carrying out midnight hangings. On January 10, 1864, Henry Plummer, Bannock's sheriff, and 2 deputies were hanged at the jailhouse gate. By spring, at least 24 men had died by rope or bullet. Some confessed, others condemned on rumor. Justice and vengeance merged until they were indistinguishable. 8 years earlier, in May 1856, San Francisco's Committee of Vigilance promised to sweep away corruption and crime. After the murder of editor James King of William, thousands armed themselves and joined the committee. They built a fortress, ran their own courts, and seized prisoners from the city jail. Charles Cora and James Casey, both accused of murder, were tried behind closed doors and hanged before a crowd of 20,000. The committee's authority spread to public officials and rival gangs, but as the summer dragged on, evidence mattered less. Dozens were deported or executed, some for little more than political opposition. What began as a crusade against lawlessness became a purge fueled by fear and rumor. In Lincoln County, New Mexico, the cycle repeated. After John Tunstall was killed in February 1878, his friends, ranch hands and drifters, including Billy the Kid, formed the Regulators. They wanted justice, but the law backed the Murphy-Dolan faction. The Regulators turned to ambush and assassination. On March 9th, they killed William Morton and Frank Baker, prisoners who had surrendered under a promise of safety. Violence escalated. Sheriff Brady was shot down in the street. Rival posses torched homes and gunned down men as they ran. By July, the Battle of Lincoln left the town in ruins, and the U.S. Army arrived to restore order. Billy the Kid's legend grew, but the original cause was lost in the bloodshed. Across the West, citizen forces rose to defend order, only to become what they fought against, turning the law into a weapon as deadly as the crimes it was meant to stop. Today, when legal systems fracture or trust erodes, power still shifts to whoever seizes it fastest. Mob justice is not a relic, it is a recurring risk. The line between order and chaos remains razor thin. The question is, who draws it next? Share your thoughts in the comments below.